Hey everybody, welcome to Church Tech.life. My name is Michael and this is Phil. It's been a while. We haven't made a video in a while and we've truly missed you. And if this is your first time, welcome. We usually don't take a huge break like this, but we've had a busy year and we can't wait for what 2026 has planned for us making videos and getting connected with you guys. Hey Phil, how's it going?
Doing great, man. I'm excited to be doing this again. I'm excited to be back at it. It has been extremely busy. We've done all kinds of upgrades at my church. We've done all kinds of upgrades, not only in technology, but we've also done a lot of upgrades as far as our volunteers are concerned, the way that we deal with volunteers, how we talk to them, how we communicate. And I am excited to start talking about some of that stuff and talk about team building and all of that. But we're not going to do that today.
Yeah, Phil's had a lot of cool teaching gigs where he's actually taught Sound 101 and more advanced stuff to people live in person, also in video too. And we thought it'd be really cool to bring some of those concepts in to YouTube so you guys can see it and we can connect with a broader audience just from, around the world compared to a one-on-one. And that's kind of why we're making this video today about compressors.
I'll tell you, as I was kind of going through and everything, it was kind of like compressors are just kind of good. Whatever you have on there, a good Swiss Army knife will work. And it's always been kind of good to just have whatever's on board. But compressors were always kind of a studio thing. And over the past few months, and literally several months, I've started diving deeper and deeper into compressors and how I can use them while I'm running live and how much beneficial they are whenever you use the correct one in the correct spot. But I'm not going to get there yet because that's what we're going to be talking about today. What I would like to do is to start out with a Bible verse. What do you think about that, Michael?
Let's do it.
All right. So today's Bible verse, we're using technology on all kinds of things. I just asked AI to give me a Bible verse that would kind of fit in for today. So this is ChatGPT's thought. It is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 8. And it says, "If the bugle gives an indistinct sound, who will get ready for battle?" And the principle there is Paul's talking about speaking in tongues and stuff, and we understand that's the underline with that. But the principle for us is the message needs to be presented clear. And that's one of the things that we want to talk about, and I think that it's going to tie in real nicely with compression and just kind of dialing in and fixing the last part of the signal flow before it heads out to everything.
Phil knows that I hate AI, like with a deep passion. So he didn't have to use AI for today's Bible verse, but he just wanted to grind my gears a little bit. So I'm sorry on behalf of the universe that Phil had to use ChatGPT for a Bible verse this week.
No, right. I had to use AI because it irritates you. I don't think I had a choice.
All right, let's compressors. What do we got?
All right, so there are a ton of different types of compressors. And let me also tell you, you're going to be able to see some slides and that type of stuff as we kind of walk through all of this. So we're going to be putting those up, and we're going to make those resources. Everything that you see going up onto the screen is going to be made available down in the description if you take a look down there in the very bottom. You'll be able to go to a Google Drive and just download all of these. They're going to be in a PDF format. You can grab them. You can follow along with us. You can also have them because I've got some cheat sheets and some other stuff like that that's going to be inside of this. Now, in the slide deck, there's going to be more information than what we're going to be covering in here today. So if you've got questions on anything that you see inside that slide deck, feel free to put a question down in the comments section, and we do monitor that on a pretty regular basis, and I would love to get back with you and have that conversation with you. So with all that being said, if you want to, pause the video, go download, and then you can kind of go over it with us as we go. Let's get started. So, Michael, do you have yours pulled up?
I do.
All right. So where I want to start right now is the compressor comparisons. There's basically 5 compressors. Now, the purists out there are going to say, no, there's way more than 5. And yes, you're right. And then some of the real purists are going to say there's only 4. So there's a ton of debate when we start talking about this. So what I'm going to say is most people will recognize 4 different types of compressors, and I'm going to recognize a 5th one, but there's other people that'll recognize a whole lot more, approximately 12 or 14. So it just kind of depends on the mindset. I want to just focus on these 5. covering them real fast, and then we're going to start covering them a little bit deeply. The different types as a VCA. A VCA, the characteristics of it is a very clear and transparent compressor. So you want to use this whenever you don't want people to think you're compressing things, I guess. And the speed is really, really fast, which is good. So it's a fast compression. There's not a whole lot of space inside of that. It grabs and goes. A FET compressor, FET, that's an aggressive or a punchy compressor. It's very fast. So you got VCA, which is fast. FETs are even faster. You got an optical, which is a very smooth and a natural compressor. So this is going to be a really slow compressor, and I want to get into especially opticals, because opticals are what a lot of churches need to be using. They just don't know to plug them in. Then you got the Vari-Mu. It's a Vari-Mu, so a Vari-Mu compressor. And if I'm saying that wrong, forgive me. It's Michael's fault. He told me how to pronounce it.
It was AI's fault.
Hey, don't blame chat. So a Vari-Mu compressor, it's a warm and a thick compressor. It's kind of got a medium slow attack to it. So a slow to medium attack to it. So it's a great compressor to be using in specific applications. We're going to cover that. Now, those are the four that you're going to run into mostly. And then there's a fifth one, and most people don't recognize the fifth whenever you start dealing with compressor purists, but that is a digital compressor. And the digital compressors are what you're going to see on a ton of things, like most digital consoles. They're built onto your channel strips right there. That's why I wanted to bring this one out. So what I'd like to do is we're going to start breaking this down and kind of going through each one of these compressors and start talking about applications, pros and cons, and that type of stuff of these compressors. What do you think, Michael?
I like it. I have my favorites that I like to use for specific instruments. It's not like, so a lot of people will choose one compressor and download one if it's a plug-in, or if they have it available on their console, they'll just use the same thing for everything. And hopefully we'll be able to teach you what the different application uses are for each compressor, so you can better use them and have a better mix at the end. So go for it, Phil. I'm excited to see what you have to say.
Excellent. So we're going to start with the VCA compressor, Victor Charlie Alpha. So VCA compressor. The use case for this is on bus mixing. Now, if you don't know what bus mixing is, put that down in the comments. I'd love to kind of explain that all the way through a little bit more. I use bus mixing a ton. So great place to use a VCA is in bus mixing drum buses. So you take all of your drums, put them into a bus, and you compress that overall bus. And whenever you're using the VCA, it's a fast compressor, but it's really clear and transparent, so you're just moving that needle just a little bit. And then your entire output channel, your main output that's heading out before it goes to your speakers, it's a good idea to compress with a VCA. There's another one I also like, but you can use a VCA to compress with it. The pros on it is it's very, very accurate and predictable. That's kind of a good thing, because you know it's going to compress whenever it hits this on a pretty regular basis. And it's predictable, it's very accurate, and it handles high signals well. So if you've got a lot of information heading through that bus, kind of like a drum channel, kind of like a main output, it goes back to being a very good type of compressor to use. Some of the cons: it can sound really sterile. And what that means is it can really just kind of sound, it can make your mix, if you overuse it or you don't utilize it correctly, it can just kind of make it sound a little robotic and a little kind of just like you could hear the compressor. So don't overuse it. It can also create less characters. Now, a little bit less character in your mix if you overuse it as well. Now, one of the things that's interesting is compressors, whenever you kind of look at them and you're looking down on a channel strip, we use Yamahas a whole lot. I've got a CL5, Michael has an M7. We've kind of been in that world for a while with Yamaha. If you look at that channel strip one, you're going to kind of recognize some of these control handles that are on these compressors. But what's interesting as we start dealing with that, not all compressors have the same control knobs on them. So knowing that is also kind of a good thing, because you can kind of dial back and say, I really want to be able to adjust this attack, or I really want to be able to adjust this feature. So knowing which compressor to go to because of the controls, that sometimes dictates what compressor you use. So on VCA, typically, not always, typically you have a threshold, a ratio, an attack, a release, and a makeup gain. That makeup gain is a lot of fun to play around with and use. It can really fatten your mix up. Some models from this VCA compressor is a DBX 160 and the 160A. The famous SSL G-Bus, G-Series bus compressors. Those are world famous. Everybody, whenever you're using waves, plugs those in. People love those compressors. I love those compressors. API 2500 and the Focusrite Red 3. Those are just some examples. There's many, many more out there. Those are some examples. Michael, do you ever use any of those compressors with you whenever you're mixing, whether it's on waves or anything else? Or let me ask another question. Do you even know which compressor you're using, what type?
Yeah, so I use VCA compressors on the drum bus, on a guitar bus, and then sometimes I use it on the full mastering bus as well, on the mono output or on the stereo output. I typically use the API 2500 or the SSL G series, typically. But there are some other things that I use on the mastering bus that we can get into in a bit.
Yeah. I love the SSL. That's such a great compressor. So if you've got the ability to do it, I highly recommend grabbing some of those and putting them in and playing with them, especially if you've got the ability to handle a virtual sound check. It's really good to just kind of play around, tune with that. That SSL, oh, chef's kiss. It's great. I want to dive into FET compression now. FET compressors. Examples of, or use cases, excuse me, we're going to keep the same pattern. A use case for a FET compressor is drums. Really, really fast compressors. They handle it really well, and they can handle a pretty good amount of signal. They're real easy to kind of deal with, but they're a fast compressor. Drums, bass guitar, and then rock vocals. So if you've got stuff that's kind of staccato all the way through, anything that's going to have that staccato kind of push to it, use a FET compressor on. Sometimes if I've got a guitarist that's doing a lot of picking whenever they're playing, as far as like acoustic or whatever, sometimes I might double patch their channel and bring them in and then put them on a FET compressor just so that I can get that up and get that compression dialed in just like I want it. Pros, excellent transient controls. And then it can add excitement and energy. It's a great compressor to just kind of dial in that bottom end, but just dial in that just real fast, just energy into the room. Cons, extremely easy to overcompress, so be really, really careful. And you can also, it can make the sound really harsh, really quick, just because that compressor just kind of dials in and grabs so much. So the controls that we have on the FET compressor is an input level, an output, an attack, a release, and a ratio. So it's really good to know what those are. That way you can make sure that you're grabbing the right compressor and you've got the right tool for the job whenever it goes through. Again, fast things, real staccato things, dot, 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 dot. Real staccato is what you're looking for to use a FET compressor. I love them on drums. Models, different types of models of compressor is the Uri Universal Audio 1176. Great little compressor. A lot of people use those a lot on drums. Real popular. That Purple Audio MC77, Warm Audio WA76, and the Black Lion Audio Bluey. Now, I am told this Black Lion is a great compressor, and people use it all over. I've never heard of it. Have you ever heard of this compressor, Michael?
Yeah, I've used their power supplies, and I have another one of their summing mixers, but no, I've never used one of Black Lion's compressors. No.
Kind of grab a hold of one and take a look at it and see, even if we just throw it on one of our waves rigs or whatever, just taking a look at it. I know, doing a little bit of research into this, I found that a lot of people are using this and they really do like it.
I love the 1176 on acoustic guitar because it tackles those harsh transients. I use the Universal Audio's 1176. I like it a lot. They actually have a new pedal out, which is actually really cool, that acoustic guitarists can buy, and they have that makeup gain control, so you can almost use it as a preamp. But it also tackles those transients, those harsh, loud, front of the note attacks that acoustic guitars are known for. So the catch, though, is that a lot of the 1176 FET compressors can sound very colored, so you got to be careful.
And that does bring up a good point, even when we're kind of looking at this. I've kind of come at this from a live audio perspective, running from a soundboard. But you might have a guitarist that grabs a compressor and throws it on their guitar pedal, and something just sounds off and you don't know why, and you go up there and do a little bit of research on what they have on their pedal board. They might be using like a really, really slow compressor that's just kind of throwing everything off, or they might not have it dialed in right. So knowing what each compressor does and how to use it would be very effective, especially as you're communicating with your musicians on stage, because that might also be able to help you solve some issues that you have up there on stage before it ever hits you in the signal chain. All right, let's move over to the optical compressors. I love optical compressors. Use case for them is vocals, acoustic guitar, and strings. There are so many uses for optical compressors. It's not even funny. I very much like them. I cannot say enough about them. Pros, very musical and hard to misuse. Extremely important. These are really hard to misuse. Now, we'll get into that for a second, but optical is a good starting position for some of this stuff where you're not needing a fast compressor. It's just a really good one to kind of dial in and just kind of put in. Some of the cons, it has a really slow response, which I honestly don't think of that as a con, depending on where you put it inside of your signal chain. And the other one is there's very limited controls on an optical compressor. Again, not an issue if you put it in the right spot. So let's talk about the controls. The controls on this is a peak reduction, an output gain, and an attack/release. So most optical compressors just have those three knobs on them. So you got peak reduction, output. So basically, how much are you going to do? How much are you going to output? Or how much are you going to reduce? Your output gain whenever it goes out, and then your attack release, how fast do you want it to kind of kick in? And that's all that you have on an optical compressor, which makes it really easy to use because you can just kind of get in there and dial it in really nicely. Some models of this optical compressor is the Teletronics LA2A. It's a very popular compressor. I know so many people that use this compressor, it's not even funny. And right now you're looking at somebody that uses this compressor. The Universal Audio LA3A, another great compressor that everybody uses in the industry as well. The Tube Tech CL1B, great compressor, and the Summit Audio TLA 100A, another great compressor to use for optical. I said earlier, their recommendation, or most people's recommendation, is putting a VCA on your output busing. I really like putting optical compressors on my output busing before it goes out. And you just want to barely move that needle. You just want that needle to just kind of slowly just kind of pulse. You're not looking for something to go bam and compress like this. You're just looking for that needle to just barely move. When you do that, it can smooth the mix out and make everything sound really good. So that's where I use it. Michael, do you use optical compressors? If so, where do you put them in your chain?
So if I were to pick one compressor that I could just have, if I had to like pick one and I couldn't have any others, it'd be an optical compressor. I like the LA2A. I like it on bass guitar because it's very smooth and it's happy on the low end. Some of the compressors can like butcher the low end. I like it on bass. I like it on electric guitar. I actually have a LA2A. It's a knockoff, not the real thing because I'm not made of money, but I have one on my guitar rig and I love it. Some guys put them on their kick drum, which is because it's good on the low end. They like that. The catch, though, like Phil said, it doesn't attack the transients, the really loud part of the front of the note, very quickly. And so you got to be careful because it's not going to tackle that. However, it is going to bring up the overall volume, perceived volume, because it is compressing, and all that soft stuff, all that quiet stuff, like quiet information, is going to be brought up, and I love that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Optical is a very good beginner level compressor to start with, and it is a very good Swiss Army knife compressor for as far as just being able to dial in and go kind of quick, run and go. Now, what I would say, if I can only have one type of compressor, I'd probably grab one of the VCA compressors, and then my second one would be an optical. I put it right up there with it, but the VCA gives me the ability to kind of handle both sides of that quickly. So I really do. I really like VCAs, but I like that optical on an output bus. That's where I use them most. So now we get into the Vari-Mu. The use cases, mixed bus. This is where they want to use it. I like optical. Mixed bus, mastering, great place to use on mastering, especially coming out off that mixed bus to kind of dial some stuff in. Background vocals. This is where I really like using Vari-Mu compressors. Get a background vocal bus, put a Vari-Mu inside of that, just dial that in, and it really handles very well. Pros, warm coloration. It's a real warm compressor. Sounds great. They said in here, great glue. I'm not exactly sure what great glue means. And I guess it kind of makes everything kind of gelled together. And it really does. It's kind of a smooth compressor that just kind of helps all the way through. It's a great little compressor to use when you've got stuff like what they're recommending here, especially with background vocals. That's where I really like using them. Choirs sometimes is a real good place to use the Vari-Mu compressor. Cons, little less precise, which is kind of one of the reasons I like it. And then you can't soften the transients. It's because of where all of that kind of comes in. It is a very slow compressor, so usually that transient, that initial note, gets through before that compressor has a chance to kind of bring it down because it is very slow. Your controls on it, you have an input, a threshold, a ratio, an attack release, and an output. So those are your controls that you have on it. And some of these models are just phenomenal. Like the Fairchild 660 and the 670. Man, that is absolutely industry standard. The Manley Vari-Mu. So I've kind of talked about where I like using Vari-Mus. Michael, do you ever use them?
I have them on my mix bus on the main output. So when we do a live stream mix, if you've ever mixed that and listened to it, it almost can sound like all your instruments and vocalists are kind of separated, and that's where that glue kind of comes in. So what it does is it kind of sounds more like a record is basically how to explain it. It sounds like everything is connected and everything is gelling together. That's why I use it on the master bus. I use the Manley versions. It's a plugin. It's not the real thing because I'm not made of money. But there are some really good plugins that are emulating these old, like Fairchild, like Phil said. But I use the Manley one, and it sounds great.
Yeah, I use plugins as well. I don't have a whole bunch of rack gear sitting over next to me, and I'm not made of money either. So even though pennies fall out of my pocket from time to time, I need to hold on to those because they stopped printing them, didn't they?
That's right. They might be worth something one day.
They might. All right, then, and I like using Vari-Mus for, like I said, my background vocals. Love them on those channels. I got some strings. I love putting them in on my strings. Love putting them in on my choirs. And I like the optical for my output. But it's a great place to put a Vari-Mu is on your output bus, but I use an optical on my output busing. Let's talk about digital compressors. Now, this is the one that I'm kind of adding in here. It's known. People talk about it. It's kind of debated on, with the purists if it's a real category or not because it is digital. But I would say back in the day, whenever the digital consoles were coming out, one of the benefits to it was you had a parametric on every single channel, which was phenomenal. 4-band parametric, every single channel, or 3-band in some cases, but I think most of them came out as 4-band. Then you had a compressor on every single channel, and then you had a gate on every single channel, including your output busing, and everybody was so enamored by that. And honestly, so was I. I used to dial in digital compressors all the time and do all of that. And one of the issues that was kind of always around, and this is kind of what got me into some of this, is people would always say digital is just too sterile. It's just too clean. You can tell it's digital, and it doesn't have that analog sound. It doesn't have that analog feel. So for a long time, there were some really high rated guys that traveled around, and they kept analog consoles with them at front of house, and that's where they ran their shows from. So national artists are still running with analog consoles, and then a whole bunch of outboard gear. Well, now with the invention of just some of the way that they've done the algorithms into some of these plugins and some of the stuff that they're doing and the outboard gear and the way the digital signal's going and stuff, a lot of our guys that were kind of analog purists are now starting to get into using digital consoles, digital compression, and digital effects, and they're kind of abandoning some of their outboard gear because it's a whole lot easier to travel with, a whole lot easier to load in and out of a truck with, and it doesn't require, one 18-wheeler just to handle front of house. Now you've got options whenever you go. From a church world perspective, now I don't have to have racks and racks of gears all by me at front of house. I've got one system right there that has everything into it. The problem that I take with digital compressors is I agree they're extremely, I'll use the word sterile, they're extremely sterile, they're extremely perfect, they're extremely locked right in. They're going to do the exact same thing, the exact same way every single time, and that's the big criticism with digital compressors. And this was something that I was kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to live with that and be okay with it and kept on going. And, we had the premium rack on the CL5, and I would dive into that a little bit and start doing some stuff, and then use some of the premium compressors heading out for my outboard stuff and that. But as I was kind of looking at it, I was like, why do I need to really dive into a lot of the outboard stuff and create, bandwidth issues inside of my console when I have a digital compressor right there and it's going to basically do the trick? Because a digital will do the trick. It's a very versatile compressor. You can make it kind of really fast. You can slow it down a whole lot. There's a lot that you can do, but you never really get rid of that digital perfection, for lack of a better term. It's going to do the exact same thing, the exact same way, the exact same time, every single time. So that was what started this deep dive kind of going in, was listening to some of these analog guys that have been on the road for a long time, running for a big artists, saying, yeah, but now we can start taking a lot of our compressors that we use in the studio out on the road with us through Waves plugins and stuff. So I started looking at what they were doing and why they utilized them, and I was like, this is starting to make sense for why we want to use something that's dedicated, like a FET compressor dedicated for drums, as opposed to just dialing a Swiss Army knife digital compressor in to make it work on the drums every single time. So I know I've kind of gone around this whole topic right there, but that's why I kind of have included this into the discussion as far as the digital compressor is concerned. The way that I've started using my digital compressors now is I use them to just kind of shave off the top end of things. I'm not using it for volume control, which is a horrible way to use a compressor. I'm not using it for where I'm double compressing on my channel or parallel compressing on my channel. I'm using it so that I can just kind of take that top and start kind of dealing with the peaks before they ever start heading down and start going everywhere else. And as I started doing that, and I just started moving the needles just a little bit on digital compression before I moved them into one of these other compressors, then I started noticing that my mix started cleaning up a whole lot more, and I started feeling a lot more confident in what I was doing and how I was doing it as far as what I was hearing come through the system. And at the church that I'm at now, our acoustics in there are absolutely horrible, and we're working on it, and there's a whole lot that's going to be taking place. That's one of the reasons why we've been a year without shooting a podcast. Is just so busy doing some things. But going down this path of looking at it, I kind of wanted to come back and say, so many people are relying on the compressors on your channel strips and there's other options out there. So I wanted to give you some resources and give you a chance to kind of look at, hey, wait a second, if all I'm using is the compressor on the channel strip, maybe I start plugging some other things in and seeing what that does to my mix. So that's what kind of started this whole snowball heading down the hill to have this conversation. So let's get into use cases for a digital compressor. And honestly, digital compressors do everything. So they are a Swiss Army knife. So where can you use it? It literally says modern mixing, live consoles, and problem solving. Those are the three use cases for it. And that's pretty much wraps it up as well. You can pretty much put a digital compressor wherever you want to and be able to utilize it. Pros, extremely flexible and perfect recall. It's going to do the exact same thing, the exact same way every single time. Cons, can sound very clinical, and it's very algorithmical dependent. That's a hard word to say. I'm not going to say it 3 times fast. So much control. You have threshold, ratio, attack, release, knee control, blending, and side chain options. I love side chain compressing. I love using side chain compression. And I've started doing a lot of side chaining in a lot of other areas. I actually use some side chaining on my gates and stuff now, which is kind of fun. Model numbers, or not model numbers, but models are basically console stock compressors. So we're going to kind of leave it there. There's some other hardware ones that you can get. There's some you can get in waves and that type of stuff. So there's some good ones out there if you really want to get into digital compression and stuff. But just realize that we're basically talking about the channel strip on your compressor. Now, part of the thing that I'm going to give is this says live sound compression cheat sheet. So this is just going to kind of be very, very overall generic of this is when to use this type of compressor in this type of environment. So for vocals, your primary would be your optical and or your digital compression. I'm not a fan of the digital compression, to be honest with you, but optical, I would also sneak in a VCA into that as well. Another great compressor to use for your vocals. Goal: smooth leveling and intelligibility. Avoid heavy ratios. Most of these compressors, like I find it amazing. I'll go to some places and I'll see like a 10-to-1 ratio in places and that type of stuff, and I'll start asking questions, and it's just because they don't know how to set it up. Honestly, in a live environment, 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1 starts becoming heavy. Once you understand what you're doing and why, you can go to harder ratios and lower thresholds and that type of stuff. But whenever you're kind of starting out, kind of max out at 4-to-1 and start dialing that mix in like that. Try to stay on that lower side of things, and that'll help keep you out of trouble faster. Drums, primarily use a FET. Love FET compressors on drums. FET compressors, VCAs, the goal is to control transients without killing the punch. FETs are fast and they're glorious. You should be using them in your drums if you're not. Fast attack on snare, slower on kick. So that's a good way to use that. Slow it down just a little bit on your kick, and even a slow FET compressor will act faster than some of these other compressors that we're talking about. Acoustic guitar, primarily use an optical or a digital. Again, love optical on acoustic whenever it's strum patterns and that type of stuff. If you get into finger picking, you might need to move into a fret. The goal is gentle leveling, so it's just going to kind of smooth and just kind of keep that thing flowing very nicely. It also gives a lot of dynamic range to it as that compressor kind of works. It allows dynamics to kind of flow in there. Too much compression just makes everything a little bit noisy. It kind of picks up noise and kind of just runs it through the signal. So whenever you start using compression on your acoustic guitar, make sure you dial it in with taste. Don't go really hard on it. Electric guitar, digital or VCA compressors. The goal is to sit in the mix consistently. Often need less compression than you expect. That's one of the big takeaways from everything. Most of the time, you need a lot less compression than you think that you need. So if you get to a point as you're trying this stuff out and you're like, man, I can start hearing the compressor, back it down just a hair, not much, just back it down just a hair, and start listening for it and see if that doesn't just kind of sit in the mix a little bit better. Bus compression. On bus compression, they recommend a VCA or a Vari-Mu. Again, I love the optical compression on a bus compressor. The goal is to glue, not loudness. So it's just going to kind of, like Michael said that really, really well. It just kind of sticks everything together and just kind of helps it get in that mix right. That was a good way to say that. That's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to bring the overall volume up. You're not trying to make it a whole lot louder. You're just trying to compress it and make everything kind of sit in the mix really good. The goal for that compressor or for your bus mix is 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction. I've gone to some places where I'm seeing 6 to 10 dB of gain reduction, and then they're wondering why they're on the edge of feedback all the time, and that could be it. You might just be over compressing the entire thing. So I kind of want to dive into some common vocal compression mistakes that a lot of churches make. Number one, using compression as a volume control. So what they'll do is they'll set your compression level, they'll almost put it in as a limiter, and then they'll say, I'm going to put this right here so nothing ever gets louder than that, so then that's going to help. So that way, that's not a good way to handle your compressor. So don't use it as a volume control. Like a good example is I went to a church here recently, and they were like, no matter how hard we push, this is as loud as we get, and we can't get it any louder. And you can hear the pastor speaking on the pulpit a whole lot louder from the pulpit than you can even coming out the speakers. And I went and I looked at their compressor, and their compressor was set at a really high ratio, and their thresholds were turned way down, so that way their system did not get too loud for the room. Bad way to do that. The other thing is too fast of attacks. You kind of kill the clarity. You can also get a clicking sound if you're not careful. That doesn't come up in this, but it's something that I've noticed. If you get some of those attacks too fast, or if you get some of the attacks too slow, right when that compressor kicks in, you can get this clicking sound, especially on a digital compressor. So if you start hearing that, start adjusting your attack and see if that doesn't start cleaning some of that stuff up. Over compressing quiet singers. This is a huge mistake that I hear a lot. So somebody has a microphone and they're singing really, really soft, and then they get loud kind of, and then they get really soft. So what people will do is they'll compress them real hard so that their loud stuff then gets to about the same volume as their quiet stuff. And then they'll take that makeup gain and they'll turn that whole thing up. And one of the things that happens is you can I can probably tell this. I was at another church, and I was like, man, I could hear that acoustic guitar, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So I would turn it out of I turned it all the way down out of the channel, and I still heard the acoustic. So I turned it down out of the vocal that he was in, and I could still hear it. And I was like, where's that coming from? Well, there was a background singer that was standing kind of close, I'd say about 6 feet away from the guitar, and the way they were running their compressor, that acoustic guitar was coming through that mic almost as loud as it was coming through source. So don't, if you over compress, you're just creating problems for yourself. So don't try to use it to make quiet singers louder. Work on mic technique and always try to make source better before you just start grabbing knobs and turning. Ignoring feedback risks. That's another thing that a lot of people will do. They'll be like, well, I sit right on the verge of feedback, and it's okay because I'm not really in feedback, but I kind of am, but I'm not. But if I touch my compressor, if I just breathe on it wrong, I'm going to go into feedback. That there's an issue there. You need to kind of address that. You should not be that volatile with your mix. And if you are, don't hesitate to ask questions. Put it down in the comments. Give us a chance to kind of reach out to you. And I'd love a chance to just kind of have a conversation with you. And maybe there's something there that you can teach me as well. I'm definitely not the authority on any of this stuff. So Not matching makeup gain. This one's an interesting one. This is a common mistake, and I know what they're saying with this, but at the same time, I would kind of kick back against this one. Now, the reason I say that is, as you start out running compressors, matching your output gain is good. So what that means is, most people will say on a digital compressor, get 6 dB of gain reduction per channel that you're running your compressor on, and then come to your makeup gain and add that 6 decibels back in. It might not be an actual 6 decibels, but you're just trying to level where your input meter comes in. Once you compress, then that's going to kind of lower that output meter. So bring that output meter back up so that your input and your output are matching. And that's good. I don't like getting this higher than my input level, but there's some times where I might not necessarily match that, just depending on the feel that I'm going for. And that's okay, but as you're learning the compressor, the way to do it is get your input and your output levels matching with each other. And then if there's a reason to start not having your output come out as much, that's okay. Just have a reason why you're doing it, and then do it during practice. Don't do it in a performance. And then watching your meters instead of listening. This is just a common issue, not just with compressors. This is a common issue with mixes and EQs and just everything. I keep a rig in front of me that shows me what the frequencies are doing inside of the room. It's a guide for me. It is not the law for me. As you're dealing with compressors, you're looking at your meters and you say, yeah, the meters say this, but my ears say this. Trust your ears. Your meters are your guide. Your meters are not what you have to follow by. So listen, know what you're hearing. Make sure that you've developed an ear for what you're hearing. Listen to it, and then trust your ears over trusting your eyes and the meters, and that'll help pull you out of a lot of problems as well.
One of the things that I train volunteers with all the time is I give this scenario where you have a ton of meters in front of you, but the audience, the congregation, the people in the seats that are listening to the mix, they don't have the meters there, so they have no idea what's going on. However, most of them have 2 ears where they're listening to the mix, and so that's what they're gauging the quality of your mix on, not the meters. And so you should be doing the same. You should be using your ear instead of looking at the meters, because that's what the congregation, the audience, is going to be gauging the mix off of.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, guys, I've missed you. It's been a long year without you, and I am just so pumped that we were able to be back with you, run through some of this stuff. We have some exciting things planned. If all goes according to plan, we'll be going over some time code stuff next week with ProPresenter, so stay tuned for that. Also, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe. That really helps out the channel a lot. Tell your friends about this. Tell other people about this. Share it, so that way we can reach a broader audience and help more people, okay? Phil, do you have anything to say before we go?
That was easy.
Yes, it was. All right, bye, guys. Have a great day.
Have a good one.